Diana's first year at Buckingham Palace was a period of psychological torture. Every move was watched, every word was criticized. The palace thought it could control Diana, but instead, it broke her. Before we dive into this difficult story about Diana's struggle against the royal system, please consider subscribing to the Diana Stories and hitting the like button. Your support helps us continue telling these important chapters in Diana's life. July 29th, 1981. Diana Spencer walked into Buckingham Palace as a blushing bride, the newest member of the most famous family in the world. She was 20 years old, full of hope and completely unprepared for what awaited her behind those gilded gates. Within hours of arriving at the palace, Diana was handed a leather-bound book. It was 200 pages long and contained every rule, regulation, and protocol that governed royal life. "You need to learn these," a senior courtier told her coldly. "This is how things are done here." Diana looked at the book with confusion. Rules about how to walk, how to sit, how to hold a teacup, how to address different members of the family, how to enter a room, how to exit a room. There were even rules about how to breathe in public. Shallow breaths were preferred because deep breaths might move the shoulders too much. "But what if I make a mistake?" Diana asked nervously. The courtier's response was chilling. "Princesses don't make mistakes. They simply follow protocol." This was Diana's introduction to palace life, not with warmth or guidance, but with rigid expectations and cold discipline. Lady Susan Hussey, one of the Queen's ladies-in-waiting, was assigned to help Diana adjust. But help, in palace terms, didn't mean emotional support or friendship. It meant surveillance and correction. "Lady Diana," Susan would say, using Diana's former title to remind her she was still learning, "you don't cross your legs at the ankle, you cross them at the knee. And you must angle your body slightly to the left when sitting. These are basic requirements." Diana tried to remember everything, but there were so many rules. She felt like she was back in school, except the punishment for failure wasn't detention, it was public humiliation and private criticism. The first major protocol violation came during a charity event 3 weeks after the wedding. Diana, trying to be helpful, picked up a crying baby from its mother's arms and comforted it. The crowd loved it. The media praised her natural maternal instinct. But back at the palace, Diana was called into a meeting with senior courtiers. Sir Robert Fellows sat behind a massive oak desk, his expression stern. "Your Royal Highness, what you did today was inappropriate." Diana was confused. "I just held a baby." The mother seemed overwhelmed, and I thought,
"You don't think," Sir Robert interrupted. "You follow protocol. Royal protocol states that you do not initiate physical contact with members of the public. You especially don't pick up their children. What if the child had become ill later? The family could claim royal negligence." Diana felt tears forming. "But I was just trying to help." "Your role is not to help. Your role is to represent the monarchy with dignity and distance. Compassion can be shown through patronage and donations, not through physical touch." This was the first of many such meetings. Diana began to dread them. Every natural instinct she had was being labeled as a protocol violation. The palace schedule was another form of control. Diana's days were planned down to the minute. 7 a.m., wake up. 7:15 a.m., breakfast, light, no more than 2 items. 8 a.m., correspondence review with private secretary. 9 a.m., fitting or protocol training, and so on, until bedtime at 10:30 p.m. There was no room for spontaneity. Diana couldn't decide to skip breakfast and sleep in. She couldn't decide to go for a walk when she felt stressed. Every moment of her life was controlled by people she barely knew. Barbara Barnes, who later became William's nanny, witnessed Diana's early struggles. The princess was like a bird in a cage. She wanted to fly, to be free, but the palace kept clipping her wings. Every time she tried to be herself, she was told she was doing it wrong. The isolation was perhaps the cruelest aspect of palace life. Diana's old friends from her pre-royal days found it increasingly difficult to maintain contact. Phone calls had to be scheduled. Visits required approval. Even her conversations were monitored. Diana tried calling her friend Carolyn Bartholomew one afternoon, desperate for a normal conversation. A palace operator intercepted. "Your Royal Highness, this call hasn't been scheduled. Would you like me to arrange an appropriate time?" "I just want to talk to my friend," Diana pleaded. "I understand, ma'am, but we have protocols. I'll schedule a call for Thursday at 3 p.m. Will that suffice?" Diana hung up without answering. Thursday at 3 p.m. was 4 days away. By then, she wouldn't remember what she wanted to talk about. The spontaneity, the normality, it was all being systematically removed from her life. The dress code was another battleground. Diana loved fashion and had a natural flair for style. But the palace had strict rules about what she could wear. Hemlines had to be a certain length, not too short, not too long. Necklines couldn't be too revealing. Colors had to be coordinated with the Queen's wardrobe to avoid clashing at joint events. Even her jewelry was controlled. Certain pieces could only be worn on certain occasions.
Warmed, slow, and emotional. British accent. Pause after sad moments. Diana once wore a black dress to a film premiere. It was elegant, sophisticated, and made her look stunning. The next day, she was reprimanded. "Black is for mourning," a senior advisor told her. "Princesses wear bright colors to bring joy to the people." "But I liked the dress," Diana said quietly. "Your personal preferences are irrelevant. You wear what is appropriate for your role." This constant criticism of her choices began to erode Diana's confidence. She second-guessed every decision, constantly worried about making another mistake. The eating situation at the palace became particularly problematic. Meals were formal affairs with strict etiquette. Diana had to eat at the pace of the Queen. If the Queen finished, everyone had to stop eating, regardless of whether they were done. Diana, who was already struggling with bulimia, found this incredibly stressful. Sometimes she would barely get a few bites before the Queen finished her meal. Other times she would be forced to continue eating when she felt sick because the Queen was still eating. The palace kitchen staff noticed Diana's eating issues, but were instructed not to accommodate her. "We serve what is on the menu," the head chef was told. "If Her Royal Highness has dietary concerns, she can address them through proper channels." But the proper channels involved submitting formal requests days in advance, having them reviewed by multiple committees,
and often being denied because it would set a precedent or create additional work for staff. Dr. Maurice Lipsage, who later treated Diana, explained the psychological impact. The palace system was designed to control every aspect of royal life. For someone like Diana, who was young, sensitive, and unprepared, this level of control was suffocating. It triggered anxiety, depression, and eating disorders. The criticism wasn't just from palace staff. Other members of the royal family also made Diana feel inadequate. Princess Anne was particularly cold, viewing Diana as too emotional and too publicity-seeking. At a family dinner, Diana mentioned wanting to visit a children's hospital. Princess Anne's response was cutting. "We don't visit hospitals for emotional gratification. We do it because it's our duty. Try to remember the difference." Diana felt humiliated. She was trying to help, to make a difference, and was being told her motives were selfish. Prince Philip was even more direct. During a shooting weekend at Balmoral, Diana expressed discomfort with hunting. Philip's response: "If you can't adapt to our ways, perhaps you shouldn't have married into this family." These comments, delivered casually but cutting deeply, made Diana feel like an outsider in her own family.
The media pressure added another layer of complexity. The palace wanted Diana to be visible enough to maintain public interest, but controlled enough not to overshadow other royals. This was an impossible balance. When Diana received more media attention than Charles during royal tours, palace officials would reprimand her. "You need to deflect attention to the prince," they would say. But when she tried to be less visible, they criticized her for not fulfilling her duties. Diana felt she couldn't win. Whatever she did was wrong in someone's eyes. The turning point came in early 1982, when Diana was pregnant with William. Her morning sickness was severe, but palace protocol required her to continue with scheduled engagements. Diana fainted during a public event. Instead of showing concern, palace officials were angry about the scene she had caused. "You should have informed us you were feeling unwell," they scolded. "I did," Diana cried. "I told 3 different people this morning that I felt sick. I was told the engagement couldn't be cancelled because it would disappoint people." "Then you should have managed better," was the cold response. This incident revealed the palace's true priorities. Public image was more important than Diana's health or well-being. The isolation intensified after William's birth. Diana wanted to be a hands-on mother, but palace tradition dictated that royal children were primarily raised by nannies. Diana had to fight for basic rights like feeding her own child or choosing his clothing. "This is how royal children have always been raised," she was told repeatedly. "Your role is to produce heirs, not to raise them." But Diana refused to accept this. "He's my son," she insisted. "I will be involved in raising him." This defiance made her even more unpopular with palace officials. They saw her as rebellious and difficult to manage. The bulimia worsened. Diana was binging and purging multiple times per day. The palace knew about it. Staff found evidence in her bathroom, but instead of getting her help, they told her to be more discreet. "If the press finds out, it will be a disaster," was their primary concern. Not Diana's health, but the potential scandal. Paul Burrell, who became Diana's butler and confidant, witnessed her darkest moments.
I would find her crying in her dressing room, looking at herself in the mirror and saying, "I'm worthless. I can't do anything right." The palace had systematically destroyed her self-esteem.
The constant surveillance was perhaps the most psychologically damaging aspect. Diana felt she couldn't trust anyone. Palace staff reported her activities to senior officials. Her phone calls were monitored. Her mail was read before she received it. Once, Diana tried to mail a letter to a friend without going through official channels. A palace servant intercepted it. Diana was called in for another reprimand about breaching security protocols. "I just wanted to write to my friend without everyone reading it," Diana explained. "You gave up that right when you married into this family," was the response. The realization that she had no privacy, no autonomy, no control over her own life, this broke something fundamental in Diana. By 1983, Diana was experiencing severe depression and anxiety. She contemplated suicide multiple times. During one particularly low moment, she threw herself down a staircase while pregnant with William, hoping to either escape or finally get someone's attention about how much she was suffering. Charles found her at the bottom of the stairs. Instead of comfort, his concern was about the scandal. "How could you be so selfish?" he said. "Think about the family's reputation." This moment crystallized everything for Diana. Her pain didn't matter. Her mental health didn't matter. Only the institution mattered. The palace's response to Diana's suicide attempt wasn't therapy or support. It was tighter control. More staff were assigned to watch her. Her schedule became even more rigid. The message was clear: conform or suffer. But something in Diana had changed. The broken parts of her began to harden into determination. If the palace was going to break her, she decided she would break their rules first. Diana began small acts of rebellion. She would hug people in public, defying the no-touch protocol. She would speak candidly to the press, bypassing official channels. She would choose her own charities and causes, regardless of whether they were appropriate for a princess. Each act of defiance brought criticism and punishment, but Diana no longer cared. She had learned that she would be criticized no matter what she did, so she might as well be true to herself. The palace's attempts to control Diana had backfired spectacularly. Instead of creating a compliant royal, they had created a rebel, and this rebel would eventually bring more change to the monarchy than any protocol could have prevented. Looking back, we can see that the palace's treatment of Diana was systematic psychological abuse. The constant criticism, the isolation, the lack of support, the denial of basic autonomy, all of these are recognized today as forms of emotional manipulation and control. Diana wasn't broken because she was weak. She was broken because the system was designed to break anyone who didn't fit its rigid mold. And Diana, with her warmth, spontaneity, and genuine compassion, could never fit that mold. The tragedy is that the very qualities that made Diana beloved by the public, her emotional availability,
her relatability, her genuine care for others were the qualities the palace tried hardest to suppress. In trying to make Diana into their idea of a perfect princess, they destroyed the real woman underneath. But that woman, broken and rebuilt, would eventually become the people's princess, not because of the palace's training, but in spite of it.